Right now, whether you've had a drink today or not, there is a small amount of alcohol in your blood. Your body made it on its own, without asking you. And this isn't new. It isn't a modern habit, or a weekend indulgence, or something we picked up along the way. It's older than writing, older than farming, older than the idea of a village, or a name, or a god. It's older than us. Because our relationship with alcohol didn't begin with wine, or beer, or anyone's first brewery. It began roughly 10 million years ago, on a forest floor in Africa, with a small primate picking up a piece of fruit that had been lying on the ground too long. The fruit was rotting. Rotting fruit ferments. Quietly, it fills itself with alcohol. Any sensible animal would have left it. The smell alone should have said so. Spoiled. Unsafe. This one ate it anyway, and it didn't get sick. That's the whole story. No ceremony, no decision. Just one small animal eating what it found on a day nobody recorded. But that moment did something no one at the time could have known. It changed the primate's biology in a way that carried forward, generation after generation, into every creature descended from it, including you. Because the gene that let that primate survive its meal is still in your body right now. Your liver still runs the program it wrote, all these millions of years later, whether you ever pour a drink or not. We tell the story of alcohol as if it began with us. A clever invention. A recipe someone figured out. It didn't. It began with an animal that couldn't have known it was making a choice for every human who would ever exist after it. Deep in the fossil record of our primate ancestors, there is a gene. Scientists call it ADH4. A single mutation in that gene right around the time this story begins changed everything. It gave our ancestors the ability to break down ethanol 40 times faster than before. 40 times. Think about what that means. Evolution does not hand out gifts like that without a reason. Somewhere in the deep forests our ancestors once lived in, the fruit on the ground had already begun to ferment. And the ones who could tolerate that fermented sugar, who could eat it without getting sick, who could metabolize the alcohol inside it, survived better than the ones who couldn't. This is called the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis. And it suggests something deeply uncomfortable. We were built for this before we were even us. The taste for alcohol is not a modern indulgence. It is a fossil. A biological memory sitting quietly inside your own cells, inherited from a creature who was never trying to get drunk. It was just trying to survive on the forest floor, eating what it could find, in a world where ripe, safe fruit was the exception and not the rule. But here's the part that should unsettle you. If alcohol tolerance evolved purely as a survival tool, purely to help our ancestors digest fallen fruit, then why does it still make us feel the way it does? Why euphoria? Why the loosening of inhibition? Why does something meant to help us survive also feel unmistakably like an escape? That question takes us somewhere darker. Because somewhere between that ancient forest and the first human settlements, alcohol stopped being about calories. It became about consciousness. Anthropologists have found evidence that some of the earliest known fermented beverages appear before the earliest known bread. Before farming was even fully established for food, there is evidence that early humans may have been cultivating grain partly to brew, not just to eat. Let that settle for a moment. We may have built civilization not only to feed ourselves, but to alter ourselves. And this is where everything changes. Because if that's true, it means the invention of alcohol wasn't just a technological milestone. It was a psychological one. It means somewhere in the minds of early humans, there was already a need. A need to step outside the sharp edges of ordinary awareness. A need to quiet something. What could that something have been? Consider what it meant to be a self-aware creature for the first time in evolutionary history. To be the only species, as far as we know, capable of imagining your own death before it happens. To lie awake at night not from cold, not from hunger, but from thought. From the terrifying knowledge that you exist, and that one day you won't. Psychologists call this the terror management problem, the unbearable weight of knowing. And every human culture that has ever existed has built something to manage that weight. Religion, ritual, art, myth, and alcohol. Because alcohol doesn't just relax the body, it quiets the part of the brain responsible for self-monitoring. The prefrontal cortex, the region that constantly evaluates you, judges you, reminds you of consequences and identity and fear, goes dim. And in that dimming, something ancient in us finally exhales. For a few hours, the wall between the self and the world gets thinner. Anthropologist Edward Slingerland has argued something unsettling. That intoxication may have been one of the tools that allowed strangers to trust each other enough to build the first large societies. Sober humans are cautious, guarded, suspicious of outsiders, because suspicion kept our ancestors alive for millions of years. But shared intoxication lowers that guard together at the same time. It creates a kind of temporary, chemically enforced vulnerability. And vulnerability, shared in a group, is one of the oldest ingredients of trust. The terrifying part is this. The very thing that allowed strangers to become communities, that allowed tribes to become villages, villages to become cities, may have depended on a chemical that quietly disables the part of your brain built to protect you. We didn't just discover alcohol. We may have needed it. And your brain still remembers. Every time a drink loosens your shoulders, softens a hard day, makes a room full of strangers feel briefly like family, you are not experiencing something new. You are experiencing something your ancestors built, refined, and passed down through 10 million years of trial and survival. A tool for silencing the mind that made us human in the first place. But that's not what scientists discovered when they looked closer at the cost. Because the same mechanism that let ancient humans bond, trust, and build together is the same mechanism capable of quietly unmaking a person from the inside. The line between medicine and poison, it turns out, was never a line at all. It was always a matter of dose and repetition, and how much of yourself you were trying to disappear. Every culture that ever discovered fermentation also discovered its shadow. Every festival built around wine has a counterpart built around grief. The same chemical bond that built villages has also quietly ended lives inside them. And then something even stranger happened. As human civilization aged, alcohol stopped being only a bridge between people. It became, for many, a bridge away from themselves, away from memory, away from feeling. The same molecule that once helped a species survive scarcity in a forest became, for some, a way of surviving the unbearable parts of being conscious at all. Which brings us to the real question underneath all of this. Maybe the story of alcohol was never really about a drink. Maybe it's about what it means to be a creature that became too aware of itself to bear its own company in silence. A creature that had to build entire economies, rituals, religions, and relationships around the search for a few hours of quiet inside its own mind. We call it a vice. We call it a tradition. We call it a coping mechanism, a social lubricant, a poison, a medicine, a sacrament. But underneath every one of those names is the same ancient, unspoken truth. Somewhere, 10 million years ago, in a forest that no longer exists, something in us learned that the world was easier to survive when the edges of the mind were softened. And we have been chasing that softness ever since, calling it by 1,000 different names, never quite admitting what we're really doing. We are not drinking to escape being human. We are drinking because being human, fully and permanently conscious of itself, was never something evolution designed us to bear sober, alone, in silence, for very long. And maybe that's the most unsettling inheritance of all. Not the addiction, not the history, not the ritual, but the quiet, unbearable awareness underneath it. The one we've spent 10 million years trying not to feel too clearly. The one that's still there, waiting patiently. For the next time, the noise gets too loud.